Hi, welcome to episode 53 of Pink's Picks, Recommendations from a Semi-Retired English Teacher. Published posthumously, Hemingway died before he decided on a preface, chapter headings, and ending for today's pick. Ernest's fourth wife, Meory, derived the title from a conversation she'd overheard of Hemingway saying, "If you are lucky enough to have lived in Paris as a young man, then wherever you go for the rest of your life, it stays with you, for Paris is a movable feast." This restored edition, published in 2009, understand that Hemingway's fourth wife had edited an earlier edition where she'd even fabricated an introductory letter. This one has a foreword by Hemingway's only living son, Patrick, who writes that this was intended as a memoir of his young formative years as a writer, and that a true foreword could be culled from Hemingway's multiple itiations included in his original manuscripts that are housed at the JFK Library in Boston. One reads, "This book contains material from the reminiscences of my memory and of my heart, even if the one has been tampered with and the other does not exist." Whew, chew on that for a while. While he worked as a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Hemingway's grandson, Sean, spent years during his off hours arranging, titling, and writing an intro for his grandfather's 19 vignettes included here. Sean writes that the impetus for this collection came in 1956. Hemingway commits suicide in 1961, when the management of the Ritz in Paris convinced Hemingway to repossess two small steamer trunks that he had stored there in March of 1928. In fragments from the manuscript, which Sean includes at the end, Hemingway refers to this material as fiction, seemingly not because his words are untrue, but rather because nearly 40 years were gone. Thus, verbatim conversations were likely difficult to recall, and the memory of each person who has lived in post-World War I Paris differs from that of any other. Having studied Hemingway in college nearly 40 years ago, shout out to my beloved Professor Rousseau, and subsequently taught The Sun Also Rises to legions of students myself, I was excited to read this book club selection. Though Hemingway wrote that this book is an attempt to distill rather than amplify, reading it had the exact opposite effect on me. It filled in many blanks and augmented my understanding of the brilliant writer. A melancholy man writing retrospectively about family, friends, and a time, an era, if you will, when he was mostly happy. In this collection, there are themes typical of his novels of this period: poverty, prosperity, pugilism, hedonism, outdoor sports, gambling, the cyclical nature of life, as well as the tour guide-like description of Paris cafes and European landscapes. He seems to disdain the private detective school of literary criticism, yet voices strong opinions not only of the authors he voraciously reads, but also those with whom he fraternizes. He doesn't spare himself either. Of a difficult year at the end of his first marriage, he writes of the bulldozing of three people's hearts. Hadley, his first wife, who had no possible blame ever, came well out of it finally and married a much finer man than I ever was or could ever hope to be, and is happy and deserves it, later calling Hadley a heroine. He credits Gertrude Stein with helping him to hone his craft, advising him to write one true sentence, cut the scroll work or ornament out, read, visit museums, and choose to either buy clothes or art. He reminisces fondly of her salon, Sylvia Beach's Shakespeare and Company bookstore, Ezra Pound, and F. Scott Fitzgerald. Hemingway recalls that he tried to write by the old rule that how good a book is should be judged by the man who writes it, by the excellence of the material he eliminates. Hopefully, he would be pleased with this new edition, and as Patrick writes regarding new Hemingway fans, that his readers will never be a lost generation. I give A Moveable Feast an A. And what we'll be talking about next time is going to be a surprise. Until then, take care, be safe, and do your homework. Bye-bye.